This week's nut job of the week is John Stossel. Stossel is a hardcore libertarian, like Ron Paul or even Ayn Rand. Now, I've actually said multiple times, and I'll keep saying it, that I think libertarians are significantly more intelligent than your run-of-the-mill conservative Republican is. I'd say on about 40% of the issues, or maybe even as much as half of the issues, I not only think they're spot on, I think they're even better than the Democrats. And I'm specifically referring to foreign policy and social policy. But the insistence on 100% laissez-faire, free market, unfettered capitalism, to the point where their ideal is that the government literally has no role in the economic sphere, I think that's nuts. So this week, Stossel attacked the FDA and basically called it useless. And I find that absolutely fascinating because the FDA is responsible for making sure our food doesn't get us sick and our drugs don't poison us, and scam artists can't sell us snake oil and get rich while peddling a product that doesn't work. Libertarians basically say in response to this that companies don't want people to get sick because then we won't buy their food or their drugs anymore. But there's a couple problems with this. Number one, that may take time. So you're basically saying, let's wait for people to catch on and make that decision. So you would be okay with a certain number of people getting sick instead of stopping the problem up front. And number two, what motive would a company have to care about long-term sickness? So for example, let's say a company is selling a product with pesticides in it that cause cancer 20 years or 30 years down the road. To argue against an objective, independent third party like the government stepping in to test quality and make sure the people won't get sick is just stubborn and silly. Libertarians simply don't have a good answer for what's called in economic textbooks externalities, which is unintended consequences of a market system. A good example of that is pollution. There's a famous case of a company dumping hazardous, toxic chemicals in the Hudson River because, well, it costs money to transfer that waste and dispose of it in a safe, orderly fashion, and they didn't want to incur the cost. Most people who have an understanding of economics and politics understand that the capitalist system, by its nature, demands that companies function as a amoral, profit-making machine. So it's necessary to have a democratic check on that, or a referee that enforces certain rules and regulations. So for basically being an anarcho-capitalist, which is as utopian and mythical and extreme in ideology as the people on the other far fringe of the political spectrum, the communists, John Stossel gets this week's Nut Job of the Week.